Last week, I was talking about the theme of the story of Joan of Arc, at least as I want to tell it in this animated musical. And the theme I suggested is not believing in yourself, but believing in something bigger than yourself. And there's a word for that. It's faith. But faith is a word I've kind of been shying away from. And I'd like to talk this through with you, and you can tell me whether or not I'm right in doing that. Because I think faith is a really powerful, wonderful thing, both for people who are religious and people who are not religious. But I think faith-based movies is kind of its own crazy category that's specifically for religious people and pretty alienating for non-religious people. And I'll tell you, I'm a very religious person. I'm actually the leader of a Latter-day Saint congregation here in Boston. I'm very active and devoted to my religion, to my faith. But still, even so, when somebody says, hey, here's this faith-based movie, I kind of have this moment of, I don't know if that's going to be good, right? And I don't think that's because I'm in any way offended with things that promote faith or are even sometimes preachy. It's just that a lot of faith-based stuff isn't good. And a lot of faith-based stuff is designed to kind of build this in-group thinking, and it's very exclusionary. It can make people who are not even like I, as a person of faith, but who is in a Christian denomination that's sort of on the fringes of Christianity, often feel excluded by some faith-based things. And I don't think the story of Joan needs to be exclusive at all. I think it can be inspiring and wonderful to people who have no faith or don't share Joan's faith. I'm not Catholic. Joan was Catholic. She believes in saints in a way that I don't, and yet I'm on board, right? I am here to tell her story as literal Catholic saints speaking to her literally. And for me, it's a really enjoyable, inspiring story, even though that is not my worldview, my faith. And so as I've been thinking about this, I've been trying to tease out the difference between movies that are about faith and movies that are faith-based. And it's actually really tricky. Star Wars, I would say, is a movie about faith, pretty overtly, right? If you watch A New Hope, they are using the word religion. They are talking about the trusting your feelings and believing in things you can't see, and putting away your rational brain, turning off the computer, right? And just letting your feelings guide you. And this is very much what my real life faith is like. That's very much what working on this project has been like. But I don't think there's anyone who's like, I'm an atheist. I don't like Star Wars, right? Like it's not that kind of movie, right? Even though it is in its own way sort of preachy and stuff, I think it gets away with a lot because this is an overtly fictional religion. And so there's no pressure on anyone in the audience to adopt the belief of Ben Kenobi or of Luke Skywalker, who is becoming a convert to this faith view. We can just watch the movie and enjoy it and be inspired by it. And that's an interesting thing, right? Similarly, I think of like Hercules, the Disney animated version of Hercules. Again, we have gods, right? We have muses, we have people praying to the gods. But because this is an ancient dead religion, we can watch it and not feel preached at, right? But I don't think it's necessarily true that when you cross the line and start talking about a religion that's alive and well today, such as Catholicism, that it becomes faith-based, right? A Hunchback of Notre Dame has some very has an archdeacon, right? One of the main characters is a very religious Catholic man, and Esmeralda sings a song that is a prayer in a Catholic church, right? And that, even though it's by far the most overtly religious movie of Disney that I'm aware of, still doesn't feel like it crossed any lines, right? But then we can look at a movie like The Prince of Egypt that DreamWorks did, and now I don't know, because it's a Bible story. I categorize it instantaneously as faith-based, right? And I think a lot of people who are not religious skipped that movie because they're like, oh, this is a faith-based movie, even though I think Prince of Egypt is great, and I think it's probably very accessible to people who are not religious. And I mean, you got Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston singing a duet, so show up for that, even if you don't believe in Moses. These are tricky questions, right? And when I think about not necessarily the way I want to tell the story, but the way I want to pitch it to studios, and the way that once it's created, it'll need to be positioned in the market. These are very important questions. One movie I've been thinking a lot about is Angels in the Outfield. I don't know how many of you ever watched that. Angels in the Outfield is actually my favorite movie about faith and the faith experience, the journey of faith. It's pretty popular on the internet. If you find anyone writing nostalgic posts about Angels in the Outfield, they all end with, "But now I'm a grown up and I realize the movie doesn't make a lick of sense," right? Like what a bizarre premise, right? How did we ever buy into this? And those are people who have had very different faith journeys, or maybe no faith journey at all, compared to my life. Because the story of Angels in the Outfield is you have this boy who prays for the Angels baseball team to win the pennant, because his estranged father, this boy's living in a foster home situation. He asks his dad, "When are we going to be a family again?" And his dad says, "When the Angels win the pennant," because the Angels are the last place team. They're on a terrible losing streak. And that was his dad's way of saying never, right? We're never going to be a family again. It's not going to happen. But this little boy, being a little boy, and a little boy's understanding, and it's played by young Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which is just delightful. He prays for the Angels to win, and literal angels are sent to help the baseball team win, and they do win. But his dad still doesn't adopt him. His dad signs him over to the state and disappears forever. And so a lot of people watch this movie and they're like, why would God intercede in a baseball game when there are all these wars and things going on? And then it doesn't even work. The boy doesn't get adopted by his father. Like, what a crazy waste of time. Why did we sit through this for 2 hours? But for me, like, if you look at the movie, it's actually really interesting, right? He does get adopted in the end by the manager of the baseball team, who himself goes through a transformation, starts out the movie as a jerk, and ends up being a really good guy who is able to adopt a couple of children who have no families. And it's this story of transformation and self-improvement through the circumstances of divine intervention and a baseball team going on a winning streak. And for me, that's what faith is all about, right? We as people living here on earth, we have ideas about what we want and need, and we send our pleas to heaven, or we manifest to the universe, or we talk to our friends, or we work really hard. We do whatever we believe will help us get that thing we want and we think we need. But invariably, life has a way of redirecting us and helping us understand that the thing we wanted or thought we needed is not actually what we wanted or needed. What we really needed was this other thing that we couldn't have even imagined at the beginning of our journey. And for God to intercede in a baseball game, for me, makes a lot of sense. That's pretty low stakes, right? The historical or eternal consequences of who wins or loses a baseball tournament are nothing, right? God can play around in that all he wants. Whereas to redirect a war, now we're having serious consequences, and to do that for a single life would be kind of crazy. And yet, that's the exact story of Joan of Arc. Apparently, God really cared about France existing as a country, and so sent some Catholic saints to tell a Catholic girl to lead the armies to victory. And that is the story I want to tell. And I hope it can be told in such a way that is fun and entertaining and accessible, that people who don't believe in God, people like me who are not Catholic, can watch it and enjoy it in the same way they would enjoy Hercules or The Hunchback of Notre Dame or Star Wars. But those who do believe will feel their faith, strengthened, and those who are Catholic will be like, "Woo, this is a movie about Catholicism," right? Like, I feel like that's possible. I don't think it's a crazy goal, and that's how I'm approaching it. But with all of that as context, I struggle to say, yes, the theme of this movie is faith, because I worry people will hear, "Oh, this is a faith-based movie. This is a Catholic movie about a Catholic girl, and it's only for Catholic viewers." And now I've lost most of the world as my audience. So that's how I'm thinking about faith, and why I stumbled over my words so much last week. I would love to know your thoughts on whether or not this is all crazy talk.